Okay, drink your non-cringe serum and you'll be all right. You want to know the funny thing? There's not even anything in here. See? Nothing in there. So I'm just basically drinking air. Hey all you fellow gamers and meme creators, Michael the Meme King back again. And yes, I know I'm doing this kind of crap where I kind of improvise my intros, but I feel like I need to be a little bit different because I always do it the same way, you know, like I always say, hey, they're all you fellow gamers and all that, and then I just go straight to the video, but sometimes that gets a bit boring. So I'm going to spice my intros up a little. And also, I have my doggo with me, so, you know, this is going to be real fun. Probably can't see him because the Zoom screen's doing weird stuff. Yeah, see him? Yeah, he's there, look. It's pretty cool. He's, you know, he's a dog like many other dogs, you know. No difference. So yeah, I'm being joined by my own doggo, and you gonna sit down or what? He's probably scared I'm gonna pick him up again. I don't think he was expecting that. So as you guys know, this is from Man vs. History, of course. And if you guys didn't see the video I did yesterday where we looked at the historical accuracy of firearms and weapons and all that beautiful stuff, these next two videos that I'm going to be looking at all have to do with weapons in some way or form. So I wanted to get the firearms video out of the way so I can get onto the historical accuracy of trains and train robberies. And then the other one has to do with bounty hunting. So I figured we might as well do the firearms one first before getting too much into weapons without any explanation. And yeah, this is from Man vs. History. And as you know, I own none of this. I luckily have not been copyrighted yet, but that may be because I'm crediting the man who made this. So yeah, like and subscribe if you're not already. Subscribe to Man vs. History's channel if you haven't already. And if you haven't already, what is wrong with you? This guy recently got monetized. You should be subscribing to him. Get him up to like, I don't know, 1 million subscribers, 2 million. He's gonna have more than me anyway, so, you know, he's probably gonna overtake me. And let's try and get my channel to 100 subscribers by the end of this year. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell anyone you know about my channel, and really help me grow this year, please. Furious Magician, if you're watching this, I just wanted to know if you found anyone willing to join me for that Kahoot video. I'll probably do a live stream next week and probably ask you for that then. But yeah, I think I've basically covered everything I needed to say. This is historical accuracy of trains and train robberies. So I'm going to get straight into this and stop wasting your time. All right. Oh, wait, I'm still recording, right? Okay, yeah, I am. So I'm not just talking to myself. Okay.
What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to be looking at the historical accuracy of trains and train robberies in Red Dead Redemption 2. For help on this, I reached out to the Georgetown Loop Railroad and Mining Park up in Georgetown, Colorado. They put me in touch with their company historian, a man named Kevin Wilcombe, who's been a steam locomotive engineer for over 35 years. Let me begin by saying that the trains look and sound fantastic, and in my opinion, the inaccuracies don't detract one bit from the game. In my communications with the company historian, he identified numerous missing pipes, gauges, valves, you name it. In an effort to save some time, however, I won't go through all the minutiae of incorrect components, but I'll still place the full list down in the description for those of you that would still like to know. Instead, I'll be focusing on a handful of the biggest historical oversights. Let's get started. First off, the coal space on the tender is far too large. On a horseshoe tender like these shown in the game, fuel was stored in the front half to third, depending on the builder of the tender. The rest was water storage. On that note, although train stations in Red Dead had water towers, they're never actually used in the game. In real life, steam locomotives took on water at every stop, which was necessary in running the boilers. No water, no steam. No steam, no choo-choo. As for the locomotives, both are missing their front cab doors, which are shown as windows, not doors, in the game. Why they made them windows instead of doors, I do not know. Speaking of locomotives, engines that size would never be set up as a one-man operation. They always had a two-man crew. A steam locomotive requires both an engineer and a fireman. The engineer regulates the speed, the valves, and keeps a lookout, while a fireman puts the coal into the firebox. In this game, both trains lack a fireman, and the engineer does all the work. The company historian believes this setup is a concession to gameplay requirements rather than an oversight, and I tend to agree. On that note, there are no passenger cars connected to trains in Red Dead Online, but they do appear in story mode. Again, this is likely not an oversight, but more so that Rockstar may simply be waiting to add them in the game once they create an outlaw role. On the non-locomotive side of things, the company historian informed me that the switches and turnouts in Red Dead are just plain wrong. According to Kevin Wilcombe, quote, switches of that time were either handle or harp stands, not flopovers as seen in the game. The crossovers are too short and too tight to safely get a train through them. They appear to be missing their guide frogs, and the general design of the switch points looks like it's trying to be both a stub switch and a point switch, which never happened. The bridle bars on the switch points also appear to be missing. Now, let's move on to some other questions you're all probably likely wondering. Not at all. As you can't purchase train tickets in Red Dead Online, at least at the time of making this video, I had to head on over to story mode to find some answers. So, in Red Dead Redemption 2, there are two major railroad lines. Each is only about 10 miles long. In story mode, ticket prices range from around $2 to $10. Historically, ticket prices average around 3.2 cents per mile. Since you can quickly do the math here, I don't really think I need to spend too much time explaining why these prices are not historically accurate. Yes, they were. In the early 1890s, the economy tanked. Banks closed, businesses failed, and there were both labor troubles and mine closures. The railroads had overextended, forcing massive layoffs. Unemployment was as high as 50%. Jacob Coxey, an Ohio businessman, called for a march on Washington to demand jobs. Thousands responded. They became known as Coxey's Army, Coxeyites, Commonwealthers, or Industrials. In California, Charles T. Kelly started a similar movement which he dubbed Kelly's Army. In Montana, it was William Hogan who formed Hogan's Army. Not heroes. Others in the West followed suit. Instead of marching to Washington, these armies began seizing trains and commandeering them in order to drive across the country and take their complaints directly to DC. In the end, despite their best efforts, none even made it out of their home state. Nonetheless, several trains were stolen, and many Americans got a kick out of following the adventures of these, well, whatever you want to call them, disgruntled workers, bandits, etc. in the local papers. In analyzing train robberies in Red Dead Redemption 2, we're obviously talking about story mode, as at the time of this filming we still, regrettably, can't rob trains in Red Dead Online. In the open world of story mode, however, players can rob both passenger and express cars, and the way in which players carry these out is 100% historically accurate. Rockstar definitely did their homework here, so kudos to them. Additionally, there's even a train robbery mission as well, modeled very closely after Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch's Wilcox train holdup from 1889. Now, in the interest of avoiding mission spoilers, but still illustrate how incredibly accurate Red Dead's train robberies are, I thought I'd tell you a bit about train robberies in the Old West. Those of you that are experienced Red Dead train robbers will surely notice plenty of overlap. Historically, there appears to have been three ways to rob a train. You either rob the express car, similar to baggage cars but carried high-valued freight, you rob the passengers, or you rob both. The express car contained the safe, so robbing it potentially brought the most amount of money. Of course, there were risks involved in doing so. First of all, the express car was always locked, so you had to get inside. Second, there was often one or more armed men in the express car, so you had to deal with that. Third, you had to get into the safe, which was easier said than done. According to an 1877 newspaper article about the famous Big Springs, Colorado train robbery, the train's safe had a combination lock which was only unlocked at each end of the Union Pacific Road. As such, quote, they, the robbers, did not touch it, as the messenger did not know the combination and could not therefore reveal the secret to them, notwithstanding their threatened demand. In such an event, some train robbers chose to blast the safe open with dynamite. Sometimes this worked, other times it didn't work so well, such as in the case of the Leeds, Missouri train robbery in 1898, where the robbers used too much dynamite, causing all the money to be mutilated or completely destroyed. That said, many train robbers didn't even go for the safe, favoring instead to walk through the passenger cars and shake down travelers. I found an article in the Silver State newspaper in December of 1886 which explains how a typical robbery of this type went down. In this case, three robbers stopped the train, whereupon one of them drew their pistol and pulled the engineers and firemen off the train, then proceeded to rob them. According to the article, quote, while this was going on, the other two men went through the train. In this instance, one of the passengers, quote, notified the other passengers of what was going on and told them to secret their money. This they did in various ways, giving most of it and their diamonds to several ladies who were aboard. As most robbers wouldn't dare search a female passenger, about, quote, 12,000 in money and 4,000 worth of diamonds and other valuables were left by the robbers in their haste to get through the train and because they did not search ladies. So let this be a lesson to all you future Red Dead train robbers. You need to thoroughly search the ladies. Can we say that? In any case, these three robbers got away with, quote, the paltry sum of $105, 3 gold watches, 10 silver watches, 5 revolvers, and 1 gold ring. A bounty of $250 was placed on the head of each robber, though I could find no further evidence of what became of them. What in the hell is that? Anyway, moving on. It's interesting to note that few train passengers ever fought back. Take, for instance, the same robbery. According to the article, a Mrs. Whittick of Carthage, Missouri, was, quote, greatly incensed at the proceedings and boldly stood up in the car and asked if 40 men were going to submit tamely to an outrage at the hands of 2. And in case you're wondering, yeah, they didn't do anything. On the same train were also 5 soldiers of the 24th Infantry who were transporting 2 deserters. These soldiers were ordered by the railroad superintendent to, quote, draw their revolvers and fight the robbers. But several of the passengers opposed this so strongly and pleaded so earnestly on behalf of the women and children on board that the superintendent reluctantly yielded, and when the robbers reached the soldiers and demanded their weapons, they quietly gave them up. In case you're curious, I did find a handful of stories about passengers fighting back, but it must be said that this seems to have been exceptionally rare and often resulted in their death. Anyone willing to exchange lead with robbers had to consider the likelihood that innocent civilians would be killed in the crossfire. That fact alone probably explains why, historically, so few passengers, even if armed, resisted train robbers. On a final note pertaining to the ways in which trains were robbed, I also must mention that there appears to be a fourth way, which Jesse James used in robbing the Rock Island Line train west of Madera, Iowa on July 21, 1873. In this instance, James and his gang sabotaged the tracks in order to derail the train. Once crashed, they robbed both the passengers and the safe. My guess is that the death of the train engineer in the crash and the potential loss of additional innocent life likely explains why this method never became commonplace. Again, it depended on the methods used. After reading close to 100 newspaper articles from the late 1800s covering train robberies from across the United States, it appears that the average train robber secured about $500 from fleecing the passengers. Suffice it to say, you could expect significantly more money from robbing the express car. The biggest payout I came across occurred at Big Springs, Colorado in September of 1877, when Sam Bass and 6 other men held up a Union Pacific train, robbed the passengers, and according to the Helena Independent, secured $110,000 from the express car, equivalent today to a little over $3.6 million. While modern historians believe that the amount may have actually been quite a bit less than that, somewhere around $60,000, the sum would still be equivalent to about $2 million today. When Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch robbed the Great Northern Train near Wagner, Montana in 1901, they also stole $60,000. A train robbery in Seymour, Indiana netted $35,000. as did one in Muncie, Kansas. $30,000 was also taken by the notorious train robber Rube Burrow outside Benbrook, Texas, which interestingly was the second time he robbed the same train on the same bridge in 14 weeks. That guy's got balls or he's an idiot. Of course, not all train robberies brought tens of thousands of dollars. When Jesse James derailed the train in Iowa, his gang only netted $3,000. Not a bad haul at all, but far less than we might expect given the effort. Rube Burrow robbed at least 10 trains, averaging around $7,000 per robbery, but it should be noted that several of his holdups only brought him $1,000 to $2,000 apiece. The Fairbank train robbery in February of 1900 only fetched the robbers 17 Mexican pesos. All that said, a train robber targeting the express car and its safe could still likely expect a minimum payout of about $2,000 and an average payout closer to $7,000. Now before I wrap up, I got a little bonus history for you here. In scouring the archives, there was one attempted train robbery that was such a spectacular failure that I had to share it with you. It comes from the Arizona Republican in February of 1895. The article starts by saying that, quote, "In all the history of train robbery, there was never anything so funny as the holdup of Southern Pacific Express number 20 at Steins Pass on Monday night. According to Jackie Burke, the engineer, quote, when the robbers mounted the engine and directed the cutting loose from the train, everything was done with alacrity and strictly according to instructions. After running about 3 miles, the robbers ordered us stopped and handed him a bag, told him to get out and to fill it with stones and gravel. Mr. Burke began to suppose that he had fallen..."
Oh, wait, what? What happened? Crap. Wait, did I pause it?
"into the hands of escaped lunatics instead of train robbers. His curiosity prompted him to inquire, what's that for? The robber explained that the bag of gravel was to be placed on top of the safe to offer resistance to the dynamite. Confused, the engineer said, quote, "We don't carry any safe in the cab. Do you mean the safe in the express car we abandoned 3 miles up the track?" After remaining in, quote, silence and meditation for some time, the leader of the robbers, quote, damned everything about the Southern Pacific system. Every foot of the road was cursed from San Francisco to New Orleans. He then proceeded to curse the branch lines, the bridges, and the rolling stock too. Quote, the robber wound up cursing himself and his associates, and there seemed nothing else to swear about without falling into the reprehensible habit of reiteration. The robbers then mounted their horses, which were hitched nearby, and rode off. By 1899, the Omaha Bee said it best, that, quote, lead and hemp caused a slump in the business of train robbing. A decade earlier, most western states suffered one a month. During that time, Texas alone had 5 train robbing gangs operating simultaneously. 10 years later, Texas didn't have a single one. So what brought this about? Lots of factors. Trains increased security, law enforcement was more effective, robbers moved on to softer targets, and some states made train robbery a capital offense. When Arizona did so, the number of train robberies were cut in half. While it still continued into the early 1900s, the golden age of train robberies was fading fast. Yet, we're still in some ways entranced by its most notorious protagonists: Jesse James, Butch Cassidy, Rube Burrow, Kid Curry, Sam Bass, and others, all of whom gained a fortune robbing trains, but ultimately died by the gun. If you enjoyed the video,
okay, real quick, I'm gonna go to the next video. So I'll see you for the next video I choose. Oh, and we're back. Okay, good, still recording. All right. So this one is the historical accuracy of bounty hunting in Red Dead Online. Of course, it's by the same guy, you know, Man vs. History. It wouldn't be anyone else. And yeah, I think this is the last video on my list. So yeah, I'm gonna get straight into this and stop wasting your time by clicking this little thing we like to call a play button.
good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at the historical accuracy of bounty hunting in Red Dead Online. We're going to get started by taking a look at the actual historical bounty amounts for various crimes in the 1800s. If you committed fraud, counterfeiting, or some other violation of revenue laws, bounties typically ranged from $25 to $100, though there's plenty of cases, these being significantly higher. For example, a forger named Alexander Cohen had a bounty on his head of $500. A Texas cashier who absconded with funds from the First National Bank in Galveston had a bounty of $1,000. And most impressively, an employee of 2 banks in Exeter, New Hampshire, who embezzled a large amount of money in bonds, was issued bounties on his head of $2,500 from each bank, amounting to a total reward of $5,000. Thus, Bounties for financial crimes tended to reflect a proportion of the amount swindled. The more money stolen, the higher the bounty. The Protective and Detective Association of Texas placed a bounty of $50 on anyone who rustled cattle, even up to $100 in some circumstances. Stealing a horse usually brought a minimum bounty of $100. Murder could bring a wide range of bounties, from as low as $50 to as high as $500 and up. Abduction bounties could also reach $500. So could robbing a stagecoach. Bounties for grand larceny could reach $1,000 and beyond. But then you have notorious outlaws that committed a number of these crimes, which in Red Dead Online they'd call legendary bounties. Billy the Kid, who historians believe killed at least 9 people, only had a bounty of $500, which seems exceptionally low considering his crimes. In contrast, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid each had a bounty on their heads for $1,000. John Wesley Hardin, who was far and away the most dangerous gunslinger in the Old West and who killed as many as 42 people, had a bounty of $4,000. Jesse James and his brother Frank James had bounties of $5,000 each. So did members of the Dalton Gang. If we average out these legendary bounties, we get about $3,000. In Red Dead Online, legendary bounties pay about $100 to $150, sometimes less, sometimes more. As such, Rockstar is paying us only about 4% of what the actual historical payout should be. Another historical inaccuracy in Red Dead Online is the amount that we're being paid for criminals brought in dead rather than criminals brought in alive. Historically, most wanted posters specifically offered bounties for the capture of outlaws, but I couldn't find a single case where a person was denied the reward for simply bringing in the corpse of the criminal. Add to this that many wanted posters warned readers that the outlaw depicted was dangerous or heavily armed. It's little wonder, therefore, how this shoot first, ask questions later approach was so prevalent in the Old West. Take, for instance, the death of an outlaw named the Slaughter Kid. According to an 1895 article in the Oklahoma newspaper, the Beaver Herald, he and another man rode into town, dismounted, and began walking into a local general store. At that point, a cowboy within, recognizing them, opened fire and shot and instantly killed Slaughter Kid. Think of Robert Ford shooting Jesse James in the back of the head when he was straightening a picture, or Pat Garrett shooting Billy the Kid while hiding in the corner of a room in the middle of the night. In other words, unlike Red Dead Online, in most cases, if you happen to kill the outlaw, you could still expect to collect the entire bounty. And when you think about it, the most famous outlaws in the Old West that were captured were hanged anyway, so killing them often saved the time and cost of arresting, jailing, guarding, feeding, trying, and executing them. Now, it should also be noted that these executions sometimes went horribly wrong. Consider the case of the outlaw Blackjack Ketchum, who was shot in the arm during an attempted train robbery and captured by a posse soon after. Ketchum's arm was amputated, but he managed to survive the operation and recover while awaiting trial. As a famous criminal, well known for committing a number of robberies and murder, it was a foregone conclusion that he'd be sentenced to hang. As such, the local sheriff weighed the one-armed Ketchum in preparation. And not to get into too much detail here, but in order to ensure a quick death by a broken neck, you need to determine a man's weight so you could properly calculate the length of the rope he'd be hanging from. Too short, and it was a slow, agonizing death by strangulation. Too long, and, well, you'll see. For the next couple months, Ketchum waited for his trial, with nothing to do but sit in his cell and eat. As anticipated, the trial came, he was found guilty, and sentenced to hang. Despite the fact that nobody in the town had any experience hanging a man, a local newspaper confidently concluded that, quote, a good job should come from so many at the helm. Unfortunately, none of them thought to reweigh Ketchum, who had actually gained about 40 pounds, nor did they consider the ramifications of hanging a one-armed man, specifically how the body would drop through the gallows at an angle due to the imbalanced weight distribution. Suffice it to say, it didn't work as expected. According to the newspaper The Oregon Mist, quote, when the body dropped through the trap, the half-inch rope severed the head. When the body dropped through the trap, the half-inch rope severed the head as cleanly as if a knife had cut it. The body pitched forward with blood spurting from the headless trunk. The head remained with the black cap and flew down into the pit. I'm sorry, is that too much information? Regardless, bounty hunting still served an important role in the American West. During this time, crime control policy was not effective at all. There were simply too few lawmen, policing too many people over too great an area. Thus, the bounty system legitimized citizen involvement in law enforcement and provided people who were frustrated by the complexities and shortcomings of the criminal justice system the opportunity to channel their moral outrage in a positive direction that benefited law enforcement efforts and put some money in their pockets. Some citizens citizens received big paydays for their efforts. On May 2nd, 1895, two cattle rancher brothers named Bill and Bob Dunn shot and killed a pair of outlaws and returned the bodies to Guthrie, Oklahoma, where they collected a bounty of $5,000 each, equivalent to about 23 times the average annual salary of a farm laborer in 1895, or in today's money, about $165,000. Now, as a side note, I just got to also mention this. The two outlaws were part of a larger gang. The Dunn brothers, fearing vengeance from the gang's leader, went to town and purchased, quote, a number of firearms and 500 rounds of cartridges in order to protect themselves. On the way home, quote, by some means a can of gunpowder exploded, igniting the cartridges. All four of the men, the Dunn brothers, not just the original two, but the other two, blown high in the air. The wagon was blown to atoms and both horses killed. Bill Dunn was killed instantly, and it is said that others were fatally injured. So, exploding wagons are historically accurate. Moving on. In addition to ordinary citizens acting as bounty hunters, there's also the common occurrence of one outlaw providing information or killing another bandit for the sole purpose of collecting a reward. In one interesting case, an outlaw named Andrew Roberts attempted to collect the reward offered for some other outlaws who were actually seeking him for the murder of a rancher. In the end, Roberts is killed in a gunfight that ensued at Blazers Mill, New Mexico on April 4th, 1878. Again, a gunfight between outlaws trying to collect the bounties on each other. Now, there were some major complications involved with the whole bounty system. The first was the lengthy bureaucratic procedure involved in lawmen soliciting and procuring federal funds for rewards. If an outlaw committed a crime and a law enforcement officer wanted to issue a bounty in order to motivate others to take part in tracking down the lawbreaker, the officer was required to contact the Attorney General in Washington, D.C. and wait for approval. There were also complications with the expenses involved in tracking down an outlaw. Often the per diem allowance for hiring deputies was so low that it was difficult to convince competent men to take the risk in pursuing outlaws. Letters abound from sheriffs pleading with higher-ups for fair compensation for posse members, which they considered to be at least $5 a day plus expenses. Reasonable requests for additional funds tended to be granted, but there were some sheriffs who requested comically large amounts of money. Take, for instance, an 1881 request from U.S. Marshal J.W. Evans, who sought to arrest a couple cowboys for vague depredations. To bring the outlaws to justice, Evans estimated that he would need 200 men paid at $10 a day plus expenses. He also claimed that he needed 200 good horses costing $100 each, and pack animals, bridles, saddles, and blankets costing $25 each. Amazingly, he also requests money to outfit every single man with a brand new carbine and 2 pistols each. As Evans thought that the pursuit may take up to 30 days, he estimated the total cost of pursuing and apprehending the criminals at $30,000. Needless to say, this request was denied. Another complication with the historical bounty system was that federal and various state governments often forbade lawmen from accepting bounty payouts. In other words, it was your job to apprehend the criminals, so you're already being paid to do so. We see this issue occur with lawman Pat Garrett, who shot and killed Billy the Kid. According to an 1881 article in the Memphis Public Ledger, when Garrett tried to claim the $500 bounty, a quote, hitch occurred in regard to the reward Garrett expected to get from the territorial authorities. So, quote, the cities and towns have gone to work to raise a subscription for him. Now, the subscription ultimately amounted to about $7,000, which in today's money would be about $250,000. So bounty hunting rewards, therefore, would only usually go to bounty hunters, posse members, etc. Of course, there are always loopholes, and lawmen knew how to exploit them. For instance, many lawmen made it clear to posse members that they were expected to donate back to him a cut of the bounty money under the table. Other times, knowing that they couldn't collect bounty money from federal governments or states, some lawmen would pressure private citizens and business organizations to post a bounty to catch a criminal that directly impacted their business. Now, as these were private bounties, lawmen could legally collect them. Even then, lawmen still found ways to maximize this payout. A 1964 article in the New Mexico Historical Review contains a letter that was sent from Sheriff Holm Bursum to U.S. Deputy Marshal H.W. Loomis. In it, Bursum states that if Loomis cooperated, Bursum might be able to substantially increase the bounty for the capture of an outlaw named John Hinton by quote-unquote influencing the business and private citizens offering the reward. Then, the two lawmen would split the payout. Now, historically, there was even an official lawman newsletter that would publish up-to-date information on various outlaws. This 5 to 6 page newsletter provided information about wanted criminals, rewards offered, crimes committed, physical descriptions, and when available, photos and sketches. Lawmen paid $1 for an annual subscription, providing them with the latest data on outlaws in the American West. Now, assuming Rockstar adds a lawman or sheriff road in the foreseeable future, this could actually be implemented pretty well into the game. Something like where the players would pay an ongoing fee, something Rockstar would surely be on board with, for access to a newsletter like The Detective, giving details of outlaws that are out there in the world. But rather than a bounty hunting system that simply puts a dot on the map, Rockstar could give players clues to start us on the search. Perhaps we could stay on the lookout for a man with a scar above his left eye, or a powder burn on his cheek. Maybe the newsletter mentions a handful of locations that the outlaw frequents, or info on somebody that may have seen him recently. I'd like to see Rockstar make it feel like we're really tracking him down. You get word that he bought a train ticket to here, or maybe you find a day-old campfire over there. Have it take some real time to find your man, so it's an experience rather than just a grind. Then, of course, pay out historical bounty prices so it's all worth the effort. Even more, Rockstar should allow players in the sheriff role to clean up a town like Van Horn, to break up saloon fights, jail drunks, disarm strangers, return stolen horses, and track down cattle rustlers. Have players work their way up to larger towns, hiring their friends as deputies. After enough experience, maybe even have the option of becoming a Texas Ranger, U.S. Marshal, or a Pinkerton. But a full-time bounty hunter? Come on, it's not even historically accurate. Thank you folks so much for watching, and thank you for the support as well. If you're curious about any of the main citations that I used, or main resources I used in creating these videos.
He took the words right out of my mouth. So I hope you guys did enjoy this. Please let me know if you guys want to see more of these videos, because the views I get from these videos are great, but I really want to know if this is what you want me to react to, if this is what you want to see on my channel. Do you guys like this stuff anymore? Or have you had too much? This whole week has caused my mind to melt any more than it already is. So please let me know if this is what you want to see on the channel. Use the comment section. Post a message. Say hi. Subscribe to my channel. I don't care. Do something. Something is better than nothing, in my opinion. Let me know. Give me a sign that you want to see more of this. Please, I beg of you. Give me a sign that you want to see more of this, or that you're enjoying this. Show me something. With all that out of the way, like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Comment the video and let me know what else you want to see me view. And I will see you guys next week for a variety of videos. And I might be taking a break from this because my mind is seriously melted. But I hope you guys did enjoy this, and see you later.